Alright, what's up YouTube? It's Dean Anthony back again, and this is a review video, 1 year after video. I have been shooting with the 1DX Mark III for what it seems to be the last year, a little bit over a year. And I just want to tell y'all where I'm at. I just recently got the R5, and I ain't gonna lie, it's warming up on me. But the 1DX, just using both of them, the 1DX still has some things that just really makes it stand out. I know the R3 came out. I'm probably not gonna get there at all, to be honest with y'all, unless something happens. But I just want to talk with y'all a little bit about where I see the 1DX Mark III right now. Alright, cool. So number one of the pros, I'm gonna give y'all some pros and cons, but number one for the pros and cons, it's reliable. When I tell you this is the most reliable camera I have ever held in my hands. I've been in the scorching heat with shoots. I've been in drenching rain in Florida with it. I've been in water. I've been in waterfalls with this camera. And when I tell you, every single time it performs, and I have never had to worry about it. One of the moments that really just made me so comfortable about the weather sealing was when I was in Florida doing some work on tour, and it poured down raining for like an hour, and I'm still out there shooting. Everything on me is drenching wet. My hat is soaked. I had just got my hair started being get it twisted, getting it locked up, and it was getting wet. I was like, I'm scared I'm about to have to get rid of my locks. But I'm gonna tell you, the one thing that was fine was that 1DX Mark III right there. It's just a very reliable camera. I can count on it for everything. It's just, I just trust it, and that's something that's very important to me actually as a photographer in the type of work that we do. You know, we all have fears of our camera falling off something, our camera getting damaged from outside or out, just for things that we can't control, right? But the Canon 1DX Mark III, I tell you, it's just reliable. I can count on it for anything. It's kind of like that workhorse running back of camera bodies. So that's the first thing. It's just a reliable lens. It's something that I trust, no matter what. Honestly, this camera body probably will still be great 10 years from now. Just that's how well it's built. Number two, the battery life. The Canon 1DX Mark III uses a huge battery. Actually, let me show you real quick. Right here, this is the battery. I'm not sure, I forget what the name of it is, and I'm not gonna try to. Yeah, it's the LPE19. I think it's the same battery that's on the new ESR3, the EOS R3. Give me a second, put that back right there. Boom, keep it nice and spot. But it's a powerful battery. I remember when I first got it, because I was still kind of getting used to it in my hands, jumping from the 5D Mark IV right here, and the 6D Mark II to that 5D, to that 1DX Mark III. The buttons are just different overall, and so I actually left it on after a full day of shooting. All right, I thought I had cut it off, took out my memory cards, everything like that, left it in my bag overnight to go to prepare for the next day. I already had another battery charged and it was a light day, so I wasn't too worried about it. But leaving it on for roughly at least 12 hours, it was still over 0.5% battery, which is just a beautiful thing. We've all been in a place where, you're shooting, you're in rhythm, and that battery, you see that battery sitting there, you're like, man, let me change real quick. Let me change. Or you just wish that you had more battery on hand, or you had a long day of shooting and you ran out of batteries. Because those things are happening. That's the life of a photographer. And having such a powerful battery that's powering such a powerful machine, because be honest with you, you would feel like this battery will run out just because of how powerful the 1DX Mark III is. But it's a godsend. I've never needed more than 2 batteries on any given day. The longest day probably was probably maybe in a 15-hour day, right, of constant shooting and whatnot. And once again, not even once again, just letting you know, I'm primarily a photographer, more so than videography. So it wasn't a situation where I was jumping to video or whatnot. But it was a long day of just shooting photography. And a battery and a half was perfect. So you can really get 15-hour days off of 2 batteries, and that's just a beautiful thing. Just one of the really amazing things about just having that big body with that big battery. All right, so the next thing, point number 3, yeah, this would be 3, is going to be the autofocus. It has amazing autofocus. The autofocus on this camera is spot on. The only time, and I just being blunt, the only time that I ever had problem with it, autofocus, is when someone's running particularly fast towards you, which was a very rare situation. I was actually doing a march, and a march is kind of a weird situation because there's multiple photographers and news people behind you, and so y'all kind of like switching spots, right? And so I was getting the shot, and I was really wide angle shot, and it really wasn't, I don't even want to 100% blame it on the 1DX. It might have been actually just me being so wide on it and me trying to be focused on someone particular. But it was, as people got close, that was the first time that it really jumped. But when it comes to general space, when it comes to like, you know, just regular distance, I don't miss very many shots. You know, it's just hitting spot on. It's just an amazing auto-focusing machine. What made me like really realize it was from the jump from the 5D Mark IV to the 1DX Mark III, where, you know, the 5D Mark IV has great autofocusing. It does a great job. The 1DX Mark III is just that much better, and you can feel it. You know, just certain things that, like, as a photographer, when you make that jump, you just kind of feel it. Like, you know, you feel it from your first APC, your first crop sensor camera to your first full frame. Like, you know, that 50 feel a whole lot different on that full frame, and that's just kind of like what it is. It's amazing autofocus. It's made for Olympics, as I think I mentioned earlier. It's just like, yeah, the autofocus is something that you definitely can rely on. It's just fast, y'all. That's just the best way I can say it. It has a fast autofocus. It's accurate. It's something that I trust. And then we're going back to the little, not even a joystick, it's a smart button on the back of the camera. The way that you can just move your autofocus points back and forth for like everything. Chef kiss. I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. It's just so clean. I love this. If y'all can't tell, I really do love this camera. So number 4, I'm gonna throw it in there. I think this might be the most controversial thing that I say. I'm not the most intense videographer. It's just the truth. So a lot of times 1080p is fine with me. The video in here is amazing for someone like me. I'm not trying to push the limits of color grading. I'm not trying to push the limits of like what a video camera can do. As long as it's steady, as long as it's a clean picture, the slow motion was just amazing on the camera to me. I think it's the same one on the Mark II, but it's just so pretty. Like everything it does very well. And it just, you know, it works for me. I know for a lot of videographers who are primary videographers, they'll have probably some different issues. But if you are a photographer first and you're just trying to like get some video, you know, like a lot of my video had a lot more to do with interviews than it had with anything else. And so with getting just those quick interviews, 1080p, the 4K quality was great. It worked smooth on my iMac. Yeah, it was just perfect for me. So I'm gonna say I would give it definitely a great video, and also it was just better than the 5D Mark IV, right? So once again, a lot of this comes from me jumping from the 5D Mark IV. A lot of, just being straightforward, a lot of the older Canons aren't really like video friendly. Just to be honest with y'all, especially like we all know about the crop that Canon has done often. I'm shooting with the RP right now. I think this is the RP. Yeah, with the RP right now, and you know, if I wanted to put this in 4K, which this is not in 4K, there would have been a greater crop, and I'm on a 24mm lens right now. So, you know, that changes a lot of your workspace, and I just don't think it's really worth it. So the 1DX Mark III for me is the only real DSLR from Canon that's a real good a good use, or a flexible use really, for videography. And once again, in my little niche of videography, like I ain't jumping in no logs or anything like that. I just need it straight out of camera. All right, and number 5 for me, it's gonna be dual CF Express B, I think Type B cards. I think that's what it is. I know they're more expensive cards, but those cards are wonderful, right? Because of how powerful they read, how much they can read, how powerful they are. There's very few times when, for me, that they even got hot or overheated. But the size and the power of those cards are just amazing. I know they're more expensive, but the once you really get one, it's life changing, right? And having two of them just guarantees everything that you need. They're sturdy, they're just very capable, and having a camera with all this power, have like the storage to handle all that power, just made it so easy. I remember when I first got it, I couldn't believe the buffer. Like, I was like, this buffer never gonna get filled. It's never gonna get filled, and I know that has a good portion to do with the camera itself. But having those cards to read from that camera changes the game for any photographer, especially like when you're in moments that can be a little bit harder to capture, and it's just a little bit more of a benefit to kind of spray, not necessarily spray and pray, but spray and prepared and spray. I'm gonna come up with a nice little logo. I mean, not logo, a little motto for that. But when sometimes, like, it's just better when you can just hold on to a focus and hit and hold the shutter down. That's how you can capture the exact moment that you want. Going back to like a kissing, the kissing moment of a wedding, or when they're dancing, or like some moments when people are crying. Being able to get that many pictures in just a few seconds, and to be able to pick out, like, it's a second, but you're getting 20 images. You're getting 17 to 20 images of just that 1 second, that like it can change like actual mood. You know, somebody could not have been blinking, but you were able to hold that shutter down long enough to get a point where everything is right, especially in moments where you can't recapture it, you can't reframe them, you can't make up a daughter crying while she's holding her father, as he's holding her father for the father and daughter dance. You can't make up those moments. And so, you know, having those two CF Express B cards with such a powerful camera, it makes just photography overall a whole lot easier. Now, before you know, y'all call me a Canon fanboy, particularly this 1DX Mark III, which I am. It's fine. Here's a few cons that I have, so I'm just gonna shoot through these real quick. One, the size. It is a heavy camera. Using it all day, I know my back. I've actually had to change what type of straps and stuff that I use to hold my camera, because it is just that heavy of a camera. It weighs a lot. You're gonna feel it when you when you're wearing it, when you're holding it. You're gonna want to put it down. You know you can't, because it's an expensive piece of equipment, and that's just a real part of it. It changes your whole bag. I used to have a sling, and now I have to always keep a book bag with me, because the camera is just that big and that heavy. And once you add lenses on it, it's only making it heavier. Number two cons will be it has a lot of similarities to the Mark II. Actually, personally, y'all, one of my goals, it had to be 2020, was to buy a Mark II, but then the Mark III came out. So I adjusted, it was probably 2019 going into 2020, and the Mark III was coming out. And I wasn't really sure, because y'all know what happened. And I wasn't sure how much like business or whatnot I was gonna get, but luckily I was blessed to be in a situation where I could get the 1DX Mark III. To be honest with you, it had a lot of similarities. I think they did improve on a lot of things compared to the Mark II. It's not the same camera, but I would understand why someone would be frustrated if they went from the 1DX Mark II to the 1DX Mark III expecting a bigger difference. For me, jumping from the 5D Mark IV to the 1DX Mark III, it was a perfect fit for me, because it was so much more than that 5D Mark IV, than that 5D Mark IV. Alright, so number three, it's a DSLR. Let's just be honest with you, with the world. Everything is moving mirrorless. I got the R5. I really enjoy the R5. I understand. After using it, I'm kind of happy to have a smaller camera option, which I did have like with the Mark IV, but you know, the R5 is an even smaller camera. This RP fits in the palm of my hand, and so for Canon to have packed so much ability into it, and we just see the world is moving mirrorless. I think Canon made an announcement, or somebody mentioned that this 1DX Mark III is the last DSLR that they're making, or at least the last one of the full of the of this level of a DSLR that they're going to be making again. They might make some crop sensors, or they might make some lower end ones again, but this is the last of that 1DX series, so it's really it's real. You know, you got to be prepared for it. So like I said, this camera is probably with its specs and its ability, you can get great images with this for at least another like 6-7 years, be honest with you. But you know, you just also want to be prepared for when that moment comes where, okay, cool, it's time to jump mirrorless, like I'm doing right now. All right, the next thing, Canon R3. The Canon R3, that is an impressive camera. I'll be honest with you, especially when having the 1DX Mark III. It's like, it is a little lighter. I'm already in a place where I had to get a RF lens. I have two, one of the kit lenses in the 1.2, and you know, it's nice to have those RF lenses, and because everything's blending now to like get everything onto one mount and one adapter. You know, because right now I'll have to put I have a lot of EF lenses that I have to put an adapter on to use on my RF camera, and so now I'm just like, should I like just go ahead and double down? Maybe it's get get an R6 or get another R5, or possibly just get an R3 when, you know, once the chip shortage is available. It's one of those things that we just all have to think about. But that Canon R3 is if both of them were available when the time I purchased the 1DX Mark III, I probably would have went with the R3 instead. That's basically what I'm trying to say. But you know, it is also a cheaper camera, so the extra money could have went to making more uses of the R3. So it's just some things to think about. And then the last thing, the price. I just mentioned it. The 1DX Mark III is an expensive camera. It is a expensive camera. I know it. And you know, it can go to other things. Like if you don't need it. Personally, why I went with it was because I was doing a lot more photo journalistic work. I was on tour a lot more, and I just wanted to be comfortable and confident that like my camera could just go through a lot of things. And then too, like I said, I kind of set that goal, so I kind of grinded for that goal, so I executed. So that was kind of like a notch off my list of things to do in 2020, and I got my 1DX Mark III. It's not something I regret. I had a wonderful time shooting with it over the last year, but I do also realize that money could have also went to some other things. Like, let's just be honest, as much as I like the CFS Express B cards, SD cards are cheaper. Like, you can get a much larger SD card for the same price that I got my CFS Express B cards. So like, you know, that's just the real about it. And so we're gonna wrap this we're on a YouTube video. We're gonna wrap this one up. So we're wrapping this up with my final thoughts. Final thoughts about it. It's still an amazing camera. At the end of the day, it is an amazing camera. It has every right to be called a flagship camera. It is a beast. If you're using this camera for weddings, sports, and just no, I'll keep it going. All right, so my final thoughts. One, it's still an amazing camera. This is a truly amazing camera. It has great file sizes. It's so fast. It's so reliable. It can definitely go through everything that you could ever imagine it needed to go through. The battery life is amazing. It is heavy. You know, it is heavy. If you don't want a heavy camera, this definitely ain't the one for you. But the 1DX Mark III in 2020 is still a very valuable camera. And still, because as RF continues to grow, right, there's just more EF lenses for it. So if you're someone who needs that faster body, that more sturdy body, it might be best right now to stay in that EF range. I know it took me a lot of thinking about jumping to the RF lens, to the R bodies and the RF lenses before I did it, just because they don't have everything I want, and then a lot of things are on back order. Be honest with y'all, I didn't really want the 50mm 1.2. I wanted that 28 to 70 lens, but it's on back order for forever, basically. And so, you know, you have to make that decision for yourself. So for me, it made more sense to be like, okay, if I'm gonna go two bodies, I'll use the R5 and I'll use the 1DX Mark III. That 50 is gonna be my portrait, just to be quick and more perfecting lens, and I'll put either that 70-200 or that 24-70 or the 16-35 on my 1DX Mark III to get those fast moments, those quick moments that I know I'll need to capture. But that's my opinion about the 1DX Mark III. If you can get it, get it. If you can get the R3, get the R3. Do whatever you want. That's really what I'm gonna tell you. But you gotta kind of make it dramatic. I need y'all to like and subscribe to this channel. But it's definitely a camera that I love. Over the past year, it has been a blessing. It has worked in every situation that I needed it from. And let me just go ahead and say, I've used this for vlogging, I've used this for live streams, I've used this for weddings, I've used this for video, I use this for so many things. And it's just a capable lens, and especially like if you're in a situation, sometimes I needed to, had to use that, there's a Wi-Fi piece that you can plug up to the side of the camera and have to use it to shoot it over to my comms director and stuff like that. So like, it's amazing. And I just want to let y'all know it's amazing. But it's probably also just not the best thing to immediately invest in this year, especially if some other options come up. Now, if you need a very fast camera, get the R3 or get the 1DX Mark III, depending on if you want to justify going into lenses. I will vouch for the Canon adapter. It's great. Just be honest with y'all. But you got to do what's best for you. And right now, I think if you do have the extra money and you already are heavily invested into EF glass, I wouldn't be mad if you went with the R3. I mean, with the 1DX Mark III. Too many threes, y'all. But if you're jumping full head into the mirrorless lineup and you're looking at Canon and you're still looking in that way, it might be best to jump into the R3, or really, and this is really probably what I'm also doing, wait for the R1. All right, wait for the R1 and see what that looks like, and then make a decision. I know, especially if it's a little bit lighter, that'll be worth making this a sale and moving everything over. So yeah, there's some thoughts. But 1DX Mark III, loved it over the last year. Gave y'all some pros and cons. Hope you like this video. Please like and subscribe. This is Dean Charles Anthony II, and I am out.